Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. It is Friday, of course, which is a fantastic day. In general, it means the weekend's arrived and there's a lot of things going on at the moment. For example, Bloody Scotland is happening right now, and that is a crime literary festival up in Scotland where a lot of authors have gathered for this weekend and are celebrating all things crime writing, including Stephen King has made an appearance there, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So that is flying around on Twitter, trending in the UK at the moment. Just to mention, there's a new show schedule coming up, and hello to you in the chat, guys. It's nice to see you commenting already. Yeah, there's a new schedule coming up. So this is kind of big news for WCCS fans. Obviously, it's been going for quite a while now, and 2 shows a week is a lot for you guys to tune into and for me to produce. The show is dropping down to 1 a week, so we can concentrate on a lot of the post-production things and get some more writing done. So as of next week, the shows will be running 2 weeks on a Tuesday to see how that goes, and then we'll swap it to a Thursday and see if that makes a difference as well, just to see how people's schedules fit in with that. So if you are a fan of the live shows, which some of you obviously watching right now will be, make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss the live shows when it goes live. But of course, if you follow on social media, you will know I will keep you informed as best I can. Lale says, I wish I was in Scotland. Yeah, me too. It will be a fantastic weekend. If it's anything like Harrogate, which I'm sure it is, a lot of the same people going there, that was a fantastic weekend. Of course, Scotland's Crime Writers Festival, Bloody Scotland, is trending, as well as Fun Suit Friday, which I've never heard of before. And when I clicked on this link, I didn't realize there's a big kind of attraction for people wearing full grown-up adult fursuits. It's news to me, but that's trending as well. No idea why. Okay, Lai says, understandable. Updating my calendar. Thank you so much. I'm glad you've got a calendar for the show. That's more than I have. Actually, I do have a calendar, so I'll retract that statement. So tonight's guest is going to be a fantastic, for all of you guys as well. Just an insight to this person's career is going to be fantastic for us, and you know, the amount of books that have been sold are fantastic as well. So I'll introduce that guest now, and you might have seen the book already behind me and in the top corner. It's a fantastic cover. So tonight's guest is a best-selling author, screenwriter, and director. His debut series, The School for Good and Evil, has sold more than 3 million copies and translated over into 30 languages across 6 continents, and it's being released as a Netflix movie next year with Charlie Theron and Lawrence Fishburne's in there, and a star-studded cast as well. And we are going to be talking about his book at some point, Beast and Beauty, which is there, and I will, if I can, show you some of the pictures and illustrations in there because they're incredible. And that is out next week. So a very exciting time. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Soman Chainani. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so
cool that you're on live. I feel like anything can happen.
it can and normally does. And the errors are only kind of marveled in you know, they're an attraction, a funny thing for us, and I'm doing it right now. So brilliant. First of all, thank you so much for joining me, and it's an absolute pleasure that you are. And I can't say anything, but that's an amazing setup behind you as well. One of the best backdrops I've seen.
Well, you know what's funny is I have lived in New York for a long time, and I go sort of back and forth between here and where my family is in Miami. And when COVID happened, my dad's in real estate, and he within a week of lockdown, he calls me and he's like, now's the time to get a new apartment. I'm like, all right, yeah, you're sort of vulturing on the situation, but he was right, and so I upgraded my apartment and have a much
Fantastic.
nicer writing space. Thanks to the pandemic, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That is a fantastic view as well. So does that help you writing your creative space?
I need light. I think it's the number one thing I look for in any apartment. I remember I looked at a lot of apartments, and it's the first thing I look at is there like a lot of light coming in? Because otherwise, I think because I was born in Florida and grew up with just sunshine and all that stuff, I start to have FOMO, because I was a tennis player growing up, and sports and being outside is my other love besides writing. So I need writing to feel athletic somehow, and I can only get that if it's sunny. If I feel like I'm actually outside. So I need an apartment with a ton of light and a lot of windows. So this one in particular, windows that open. So this apartment in particular, you're looking at one window, one sort of large pane of glass behind me. It's basically 360. So there's every side of the apartment and all the windows open. So when the weather's nice, like today, I'll open up all the windows from the bottom, and you basically just have this rush of air, and you feel like you're writing outside. It's kind of amazing.
That is amazing. It certainly is. And you mentioned there the tennis you played a lot of when you were growing up in your younger days. Is that something you could do in New York? Yes,
I still play 4 or 5 times a week at this indoor club. In fact, what's really funny is I'm a huge fan of. I'm a big Anglophile. Like, I've spent so much time in Britain over the years. I used to write for Aardman. Way back when I got out of film school, I moved to Bristol and wrote for them for a while and worked on a couple of their stop motion movies. And so I just am obsessed with tennis and with British tennis in particular. And Cam Norrie, your sort of British number one, was down here for the US Open and happened to be practicing at my club, and a few of us got to hit with him.
Wow.
So tennis is like huge part of my life, as is the UK, because I feel like whenever I get a chance, I'm over there.
Fantastic. I mean, as someone who's played tennis, 4 or 5 times a week is very regular. I've dabbled in tennis, and that was like once or twice in a month. But someone who plays that regularly, did you notice a big difference when you were playing that sort of professional?
Yeah, I did. It's so funny because I feel like, and he was talking about this too, is that once you get to a certain level where, you've been playing your whole life, you have all the shots, and everyone on the surface looks like they're all at the same level. But once you actually start playing with them, the decision making, the speed, the quickness of instinct, it's amazing to watch. It's amazing to see someone who's that great in this field and experience it firsthand. It really does stay with you.
We mentioned on the show last week, Emma Raducanu, I think her second name is, obviously winning the Open then. At that age, she already seems to have that instinct and intellectual ability on the tennis court, and at such a young age. Do you think that is like something that's been bred, as a trainer would do from a young age?
I'm going to be Debbie Downer, unfortunately, about this particular situation, because Emma is a rare case in that she just was not playing on tour. She's like everybody's dream of like one day they wake up and are like, just like almost like a random person off the street. I'm going to go to Wimbledon, right? She had not played on tour. She didn't have a single win on tour. She's just so highly skilled and such an incredible sort of young competitor, and played so freely that she was able to almost step off the street and win the US Open. Now it gets trickier because all of a sudden, she's going to have to play smaller tournaments. The lights are going to be on her. She's going to be expected to win. The freedom to sort of come in and have a Cinderella moment disappears because now everyone knows you're Cinderella. So it has not worked out that well for teenagers in the past, especially teenagers who are quite glamorous like she is and have the potential to rake in literally hundreds of millions of dollars of endorsements, just because she has so much charm and things going for her. So now we're gonna have to see if she can really, get past all that and then still enjoy her tennis. I'm worried because the past sort of suggests that once you get famous and in any field, if you're young and you're famous, it starts to compromise the thing you got famous for.
Certainly.
So I think for writers especially, I've seen it with younger writers, who've had a big hit at 23, 24. It's very, very difficult, I think, to process in a lot of ways. And so I'm lucky that, whatever success I've had came later, because I felt like any sort of fame or sort of like, fleeting hits of dopamine off notoriety didn't mean as much to me as the act of writing. And I still am always focused on the actual work. That's all that matters to me in the end.
Definitely. Lale says that, yikes, the pressure is difficult to deal with at such a young age. And as you mentioned there, that goes across the board of writing as well as sports. So let's, after that segue there into tennis, let's have a little delve into round one, which is called The Road to Writing. And we'll find out about how you actually arrived to where you are now. So, as we mentioned, you've sold quite a few books in your first series, and you are now releasing Beast and Beauty. But tell the audience, let us find out, how did you get into writing in the first place, and what kind of were the inspirations for you?
I think writing was the only thing that I had to express myself. You know what I mean? Like, it was my way of processing emotions, whether it was in a diary or whether it was in stories for school or essays or things like that. I just used writing in order to just be free, and it was from when I was young. And anytime a teacher assigned a creative writing assignment, I always, pushed it to the extreme. And I always felt like the thing that defined my writing early on was the ambition, right? Like, I was, I think, 14 and decided to write a massive screenplay about a blind assassin in 1970s Ireland, even though I had never been to Ireland. I tried to write it in dialect. I mean, like, everything I did was just ridiculous. Like, everything, like, I couldn't just write a short story. I had to write a short story about, like, Persia in 500 BC with no research. Like, it was just, I just always wanted to use my imagination as much as I could. And I think that's what defined me as a writer, was the sort of feeling of wanting to escape this world into something completely different, no matter how grand and unreachable it was. So, yeah, I think I was writing from an early age and really fell in love with it from there. But I never thought I was going to be a writer. I think those are two very different things.
That is quite an adventure to try and write in Irish dialect in the first place, with or without a research. So I think that is a plausible thing to attempt.
Yeah, I think I found it a couple of years ago in a box somewhere. And it is terrible, but it is dramatic. And I think what's funny is sometimes you see your gift early on, and my gift from a very early age, even from like 10, 11, 12, is I could tell a good story. Like, the storytelling was in me, in my bones from a young age. I could tell a good story. And so then it became about, later on, developing the writing craft. But I always had the storytelling.
So at what point then did you have these great ideas? And by the way, would that ever come back in? Would you ever consider taking that work and thinking, you know what, I can have another go at this?
No.
No?
I mean, look, a blind assassin in 1970s Ireland, I think it would be kind of amazing.
I mean, I've heard stories that are more far-fetched than that, but
I think it would actually be kind of an amazing thing.
There's a current series out on Apple TV with Jason Momoa, and they're all blind and they're fighting wars with swords and axes, and I don't quite understand how that works.
Yeah, and then I have to see it. Well, somewhat had the idea. That's the other thing. Is sometimes, like, I always think to myself, like, am I the best person in the world to write this idea? And if anybody else in the world can do it, I won't do it. Like, that's my founding sort of like criteria for anything I write, because life is short. You don't have that long to write, and so you can only write a certain number of things, especially with novels where they take a year and a half. So I can only do stuff that that I feel like is so specific to me that no one else can do it. And so far that's guided my career, I think.
Yeah. So, at what point then, after you were writing these stories, did you step into the professional world? We mentioned obviously being a director. Was that kind of the first profession in that scenario?
I think so. I went to film school. Well, first I decided I was going to go into business because I sort of gave up all my dreams. When you're 21, you're just trying to figure out how to make make So I became
Mm.
a pharmaceutical consultant. I went to Harvard where they sort of train all the creativity out of you. And they sort of reduce you to these little machines of achievement. And so I, got a job as a pharmaceutical consultant. I got fired. I got another job in business. I got fired. I kept getting fired because I was writing stories and screenplays.
Okay.
So it became very obvious that no matter what job I tried to take, my subconscious would sabotage me and have me write in the corner.
Mm.
So I ended up going to film school, where I think I really developed my storytelling in a deeper kind of structural way, and came out as a screenwriter and director, and started working for Aardman and getting work in screenwriting. But I just didn't like all the notes from people who I felt were not particularly creative. It's a lot of suits giving you notes that sort of compromise the material. And I think somewhere inside me, I longed for more creative freedom. And when I had the idea for the School for Good and Evil, I think there was the sudden realization of, well, if it's a book, then no one can mess with it, So I think that's what happened. It was sort of a slow. I think I was always meant to be a novelist, but I think it was a slow transition of my body and brain catching up to it, and my experience catching up to it.
Yeah, I certainly think if you go into a profession thinking, you know what, I need to focus on this, and what keeps happening is you keep writing, is definitely a sign that you need to go in that direction again. So when you went to film school, you mentioned how it kind of helped your process develop. How kind of useful was that for you to develop as a writer, and not, a screenwriter becoming an author? There's quite a difference in that skill. So did you have to then retrain yourself to write a novel, or were you quite comfortable just going straight into that?
I think I didn't know how to write a novel. I think I knew how to write a great screenplay. And so when I wrote The School for Good and Evil, I had sort of a very solid outline that was almost like a screenplay. And then while fleshing it out, I sort of discovered my own rhythm. But that first novel moves so quickly because it almost has the speed of a screenplay. And I think that's what made it successful, was because, young readers and older readers could pick it up and get hooked very fast because it moved at the speed of light, So that first book, I think, kind of shocked everybody because it was so unnovelistic in its just aggression of pace, and I think then over the course of books 2 through 6, by the time you get to 5 and 6, they're very much, novelistic in their pace and tone and all that sort of things. They have that kind of Potter-esque, rhythm to them. But the first book, the one that launched everything, I think the secret of it was that it moved at the speed of light.
Did you expect that at all when you released it? And I mean, when you release a book as an author for the first time, it's kind of, you put yourself out there. So what was your reaction to that? And did you expect it to go that way?
It's funny because I know this sounds so callous and arrogant, but it's not. It comes from a completely different place. But I just don't really care what readers think of the work. And it's because I have such a specific vision for what I want something to be. And I don't know if I'll ever meet it. Like, maybe I'll get close, but I'll never quite ever 100% get there. Only once. I think there was one book that did get there. And so I'm always just trying to get there. And so when I put it out into the world, what I'm thinking about is this what I meant it to be? You know what I mean? And I feel like if I achieve that, then there's going to be some readers out there, whether it's one or whether it's a million, who have that same deep connection to it that I do. And so what I'm looking for is not quantity of readers. I'm looking for intensity of readers. And I think with School for Good and Evil, what we realized quite early on was that, it was a slow build. And so we didn't have that big an audience at first. but the running joke amongst sort of the YA community was that School for Good and Evil fans were crazy. Like they were like, you know, witches in the crucible, like running around, like waving it in people's faces, being like, if you don't read this, I won't be your friend. You know what I mean? Like people were like crazy about it. And I think that's what saved us, you know. Like the funny story that I remember someone telling was there was a bookstore in Vermont, in rural Vermont, and the bookseller told me she remembered one day where the entire boys' seventh grade baseball team came in their uniforms and started asking for the book. And like these are like jockey 13-year-old boys asking for a book that has two girls on the cover. And she's like, first it was three, and then another three came, and finally she's like, by the next group came, she's like, what is going on? She's like, was this assigned in school? And they're like, no, this girl, apparently the prettiest girl in the class, got up to do this book talk, and like basically was like, if you don't read this book, then like you can't be my friend. Like she basically blackmailed her class.
That's incredible.
Everybody in the school to go and buy this book in order to stay in her favor. So I think that was what we were trying to do with School for Good and Evil, was, you know, not appeal to the masses so much, but appeal to those who had the same kind of sense of humor and thematic sort of like craving that I had. And I feel that way with Beast and Beauty too. You know, Beast and Beauty is such a specific book. It's my attempt to rewrite all the Grimm's fairy tales as if we had a view to today's times. So if I was back in the 1700s and 1800s and writing these down for the first time, what would I have done with these stories instead? Almost like a rival Grimm's, you know? And so they're edgy and provocative. And I mean, it's such a tricky book in the sense of in the US, it's being published for ages 10 and up for young readers. In the UK, it's being published by Fourth Estate as a high literary book for adults. So, you know, it's such a different kind of book, and I'm just curious what people are gonna make of it. But I don't feel like the reaction will at all affect my view of it.
I can see there when you mention how you write things that you think maybe no one else is kind of doing, and this is what you put your own stamp on it, and what you talked about in that book now reflects that very much. And one of the things you picked up on was the fact that of the age sort of expected audience, I guess. And some of the reviews from your first series were this one here. For example, my daughter is 10 years old and is loving this story. We share reading the book as she can't manage it on her own due to having adventurous, I like that language. How do you plan to write a book that is kind of aimed at the younger generation, but possibly feeds into adult reading as well? And do you have to be a bit careful with that kind of dialogue?
I write it as if it's for an adult. I really do. And then what I do is that's in the drafts. And then at some point I go through and I don't dumb it down, but I read it at triple the speed. So what I'll start doing is read it quickly, as if because I know that a young reader reads at a different pace than an adult. So I read it quickly. And anytime I get stuck on a word or a tangle of language, then I simplify it and make it clearer. So to me, it's never about dumbing it down, because a young reader will pick that up instantly. And I'm trying to get the sophisticated kids, those super intelligent kids, you know, the ones that I feel like were underserved when I was younger and we had nothing to read. So the way to do that is to just read it faster. And I'll read it faster, so it moves. And pace is how you get them. Because if the story is moving at a strong pace and they don't know a word, a kid does not care. They'll skip. They'll just keep going, you know? But yeah, I try not to compromise my own language.
Okay. That's some fantastic advice, that is. I'm sure a lot of people who are going to write in that genre and kind of age group will look into that. I'm sure they will. Let's get into part 2 then, because we're kind of getting caught up and dabbling into Beast and Beauty a little bit. So let's talk about it properly in round 2. So we did mention just then Beast and Beauty, which I have here, by the way. Incredible, very weighty book, by the way.
I was going to
This is
say the US version and the UK version have completely different weights. The US
oh,
version you can sort of like carry around and whatever. And I got the UK one yesterday, and I was like, "What?"
it weighs a ton.
It weighs a ton. It's like it's a very thick and weighty book,
But
but
I
it's
like that.
beautiful. Yeah, it's like I think because Fourth Estate is such an amazing imprint, and I think they know when to make something feel like sort of like a classic or like a jewel. And I think with this, because the art is so gorgeous and because the
Mm.
stories have that sort of like timeless feel, they wanted it to feel almost like a relic.
It really is incredible, and the artwork in there, as you mentioned, is I've never seen anything like it. It is just fantastic, and there's only so much you can do with kind of fairy tale imagery and things like that that isn't already stamped all over certain productions in films and things like that. So to do it and still have a unique feel to it, and to have that edge of darkness but also fantasy as well, it's done so well. Am I right to show some of these
Oh
pictures?
yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, that is incredible, which is obviously a tower, the princess's tower. But just little things like this. So you've got flowers in the Rapunzel's hair, showing them really well, aren't they? But and what I like as well is the contrast in the imagery. So it's not all kind of similar,
Hmm.
and that's in the style and the colors in there as well. So, what was the influence behind these sort of images? And why did you feel the need that they needed to be that type of imagery in these books?
I felt like when you read fairy tales, you have to have illustrations because the illustrations can often add to that sort of tension and darkness that are
Mm,
often there, but you need the right illustrator. And we looked at a ton, but we kept coming back to Julia Iredale, whose work, on the surface can have that simplicity of she's just can have that simplicity, but she's so talented that it has that edge underneath and can be quite haunting. And that's what we wanted. We wanted illustrations that looked quite simple and fairy tale on the surface, but really left you unnerved, especially like that cover. That cover is just, that was her first sketch. So she
wow.
sent it in as her sketch, and she's like, okay, now I'll go to the final. And we're like, no, no.
Don't change a thing.
No. And she's like, this is the rough draft. And we're like, I think she even did try a final draft, and we're like,
Yeah, leave it, leave it, leave
going,
it.
going back, yeah, it was just so beautiful.
So talk to us then about the tales in here, because you've mentioned that there are a collection of tales and you have their own twists on there. Why did you choose the specific tales in here? And you mentioned approach from like an old kind of style
Mm.
vibe to it. How did you approach that as a writer, having maybe not gone in that direction before?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I had a better answer about strategy and all that sort of stuff. But the way it worked was my brain just gave me one story at a time. So
Yeah.
I remember writing Red Riding. Wrote Red Riding Hood first, and it's just so intense and dark. It's about a town that is being terrorized by wolves, and so they basically make an agreement that the wolves will howl on the first day of spring, and the town will send in their prettiest girl to the forest, and the wolves will howl once they leave. And that will
Wow.
mean the sacrifice is done, and they get another year of peace, right? And
I
I
can't
thought,
wait. I can't wait to get into
and I
that.
I remember writing. That's the first two sentences of the story, and I just remember thinking, like, what am I writing? Because I didn't know it was going to be a book of fairy tales. I didn't even know it was Red Riding Hood. And then I kept going with the story, and I was like, oh, this is Red Riding Hood. And then I finished that and immediately had the idea for Sleeping Beauty,
Mm,
which is about uh, a prince who wakes up. Because the original Sleeping Beauty is about a princess who wakes up. This is, the Grimm's version, about a princess who wakes up pregnant and doesn't know um, who the father is, right?
wow.
And we all think of the Disney version, but that's not what Sleeping Beauty is about. Sleeping Beauty is much more about this princess who unfortunately doesn't know who the father of her child is. And so for my Sleeping Beauty, I did a prince who wakes up and every night he's been sucked of blood. So there's someone feeding on him in the night and he doesn't know who it Innocence. And it's this kind of deep gay awakening story that, is quite dark and intense and has lots of murder and bloodshed, like the original Sleeping Beauty. But my brain just gave me one story at a time, and each one was completely different, and they appear in the collection in exactly the order my brain gave them to me. So it was very much an exercise in trust. I didn't know. Often I wrote the stories not even knowing what the twist was going to be at the end, because every story has sort of a big, almost like, surprising twist that can sweep the rug out from under you. And often I didn't know what that was till I got to it. And then I would be like, whoa, this is where we're going? Okay.
I'm taking from what you're saying there that you might be a bit of a pantster when it comes to your writing then.
The most. I mean, pantser is not even it. It's more of a, like, walk into the wilderness naked and hope that clothes arrive.
I love that.
That is it, because I'm a deep meditator. I'm a believer in, all sorts of, like, finding ways to achieve ego death and get rid of your, like, sort of like presence while you're writing, so that it's pure channeling. Like, to me, conscious power is useless when it comes to writing. So anytime I try to outline something, it's never going to work for me. I have to be in a flow. And so my entire life is about creating that flow.
Okay. That's let's have a little dig into your writing process then, because I imagine it's not very common compared to some other people's way of writing. For me, it's literally sat at a desk, put some music on perhaps, and just get on with it. What's your setup like? And do you have anything like music to aid you, or do you just like the noise of the street behind? What's the score with that?
No, so the important thing with writing for me is I have to be tired. So I play tennis in the morning, then I come back and write. Then I go train with my trainer, and then I come back and write. And those the blocks have to be when I'm exhausted, because that's how I get in the flow, because I'm too tired to think, and therefore it just comes.
Wow.
So, no, otherwise I just sit. I can't sit at a desk because the desk reminds me of work. So I have to sit in like a rocking chair or like on a couch. It has to feel loungy. And I wear earplugs, and I have my little computer glasses, my like polarizing glasses to get rid of the glare. And then, I just go. And like anytime I'm off track, like anytime I'm going the wrong direction, I feel my brain go, we're going to get up right now, or we're going to check the internet, or we're going to check my phone. That usually means something is wrong. And then when I come back to it, I know that I have to look at it again.
That is fascinating. I mean, when you say tired, do you mean physically tired or
Physically
of tired? Yeah, okay.
Physically tired.
I'm gonna have to try that. That's definitely gonna be a test that needs to be documented.
Well, I'll tell you another story. So yesterday I had 3 hours set for writing than I needed, and then because I'm on tour for Beast and Beauty, everything gets messed up and things happen, and I was left with 45 minutes, right?
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I'm screwed because I have a book due fairly soon. And I'm like this, I'm never going to make it, like, oh no, it's going to be late now. And I just felt my brain go, no, we got it. In 45 minutes, it just went into this like weird fugue state where it like got, like I needed to hit my 1,500 words for the day or whatever. I'm like 1,500 words, exactly what I needed, letter perfect, everything great, poof. Like it was almost like because I'm so used to channeling and I'm so used to sort of accepting that I'm not in control of it, that like that practice came in handy for a second, where it was like, no, like you're going to totally surrender control because it can be done. Watch. And so it was a very almost like out of body experience. It was really interesting. I was reading through it back today and I was like, whoa, I can't believe this all happened in 45 minutes. The question is, can that be repeated? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it has to be induced by pressure.
It's a lot more time efficient if you can get that down to 45 minutes.
Well, it reminds me of tennis, because the running joke in tennis was that growing up and even today, that I can never win quickly. Like I have to lose the first set and the other person has to have like the light at the end of the tunnel of winning. And then something activates in me being like, oh no, I don't want to lose. And then I'll do it. And so I wonder if that's the way it is in writing, where it's like, I need my back up against the wall and then I surrender. So I wish there was a way to avoid that.
So obviously this book is released next week. I think that's correct. Yeah. How
Yes.
are you feeling about that release? Considering obviously, the School of Good and Evil was a series of 6 books, and now this is a standalone moving on from that. How do you feel about that? And is there kind of a pressure to this, or are you quite happy that this is a completely separate entity and you're hoping those fans will transition into it anyway?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I feel no pressure whatsoever. I think in the sense of personally, I feel pressure for the publisher. I feel pressure for the people who've worked on it. I want it to do well, but I have no nerves about it
Mm,
because I feel like this particular book is so specific. And I think it's going to find its own readership in its own way. It's not meant to be this sort of like mass, um, you know, fantasy for all the masses, you know?
yeah.
Um, it's a different kind of book. It's edgy, it's provocative. It's going to scandalize a lot of people, I think, I hope in a good way, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of backlash too, you know, because I deal with some pretty intense themes. Um, so I don't know. I honestly don't get so attached to the reaction. I just know how I feel about the book, and I feel like the book is very me. It's like it just is what I wanted to do with these stories,
Yeah.
and either you will get them or you won't, you know. And there's nothing I can do to force that, and I feel like you don't want to be loved by everyone, you know, and especially this kind of book where it's so personal and so specific to how I do things. I'm happy with those who actually enjoy it.
Mm, that's some great insight. And do you have, this is going to be a tough question, of the stories in this book, do you have one that you think is kind of your favorite?
I mean, they're a little different. I think Peter Pan was the last one, and it had come after I wrote Rumpelstiltskin, which is about the devil. I literally wrote the story about what the devil is like. And it was quite dark and acid because I had to get into the devil's headspace because he
Mm,
runs that story. And Peter Pan then was sort of it was the last story. I knew it was going to be the ending. And I was able to just write the ultimate love story, you
mm,
know? And it's so romantic. And I felt like it just was so much fun to write, you know? It just felt like this like sort of beautiful love song. Um, so that one really stuck with me. Sleeping Beauty was sort of my homage to like Anne Rice, you know, like Anne Rice who wrote such sensual kind of erotic stuff that I loved as a kid. I wasn't supposed to be reading it, but I loved it all. And so I wanted to write something like that, you know. I remember my editor read that one and she was just like, "Are we really putting this in a book for kids?" I'm like, "They won't get it." She's like, "But they're gonna feel it." I'm like, "Good."
Oh, I love this. I've already got an impression, imagination of you and the publishers when you said the pressure's on the publisher, and now they're saying you can't do this. You're like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Put it in
No,
there.
she is. I'm lucky to work with the greatest editor on the planet. She's been at HarperCollins for 40 something years.
Wow.
She edited Maurice Sendak, you know, Shel Silverstein. She is, you know, she's dealt with troublemakers before, and I think she knows I'm the ultimate troublemaker. And so we argue a lot over where the line is, but
Okay.
what's great is in the end we always agree because sometimes I'll be like, here's why I think it's okay, and and she'll tell me here's why I don't think it is, and both of us will think about it, and 50% of the time she'll come back and she'll be like, actually, like I shouldn't confess this one, but it's in the book. You'll see. So Cinderella starts with, you know, the prince going in search of a wife and finding a wife. But then he goes to Malaga and he meets Magdalena, and Magdalena works at a melon stand. So the moment he gets one look at Magdalena and her melons, he's so so Tony is like, we're not doing this. And I'm like, why? No kid's going to get it. No kid's going to. She's going to think Magdalena works at the melon stand. And adults are immediately going to know that I am writing a sex farce for this story. Because that's what it is. That story is a Spanish sort of Almodovarian, like just madcap kind of sex farce, you know? Almost like a Canterbury Tales, like when you get to the really sort of like bawdy stories. That's what Cinderella is. Um, and, you know, I had to really put pressure on her and be like, I know you think it's unintelligent and not clever and ruins like the sophistication of the collection, but that's what this story is. This
Yeah.
story is one giant fart bubble of fun in the middle of this very like intense, sophisticated collection. And she immediately, I think, started to understand it. You know, and then
Okay.
so she gave me that one, but then there were other ones that she was right, where she would be like, I think you're going too far here. There was I had a miscarriage in one of the
Mm.
stories where a baby is born stillborn. And it wasn't meant to be provocative or anything like that, but she thought it was too dark and ended up being so dark a place that we couldn't get back from it. So,
Okay.
you know, it really is about a conversation between me and my editor where she has all the experience in the world, and we sort of trust each other, and we just keep talking about it. And luckily, we usually have enough time where I don't think we've ever disagreed
Mm.
on something that's gone to press. You know,
Okay.
only once, and she,
Only once.
only once, and she was correct, which was in the sixth book of the School for Good and Evil. I have Merlin turn into a baby. He gets reversed in age, and we watch him grow up through the book. And by age like 3 and 4, I have him like talking a little, you know. And she's like, "You've never had children. This is not how they talk." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I need him to talk a little. I need him to say something." And in some of the reviews for the book, they were like, "Clearly, this author has not spent any time around children because his 4 and 5-year-old Merlin speaks like an adult." I'm like, "Well, leave Merlin. He can get around."
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, Fantastic. Lalai says in the chat, do you include trigger warnings, especially for the younger audience? But remember, Shrek had a lot of adult humor. It really did. So do you think you need to do that, or do people kind of know what this work is going to be about?
I mean, I think it's funny because I don't believe in including trigger warnings in the text. I think trigger warnings are something that are kind of, what's the word, going to morph over time
Mm,
to some whatever it's going to be. You know what I mean? Because there weren't trigger warnings before, and now there's trigger warnings, so we don't know what it's going to be. And so I don't want it part of the text. That said, like on Goodreads, all the reviews, people have been, kind and smart enough to put trigger warnings. Um, so they're showing up in the reviews, and I feel like anybody who goes looking for the book hopefully will find them.
yeah.
But it's also and also trigger warnings are tricky because you don't know what to include. I remember I saw one on Goodreads where it said trigger warning cannibalism. And I thought, cannibalism? Where is there cannibalism in the book? And first of all, I was like, is that a trigger for people, cannibalism? And then I realized that she was talking about Hansel and Gretel.
Right. Okay.
And I was like, oh, are we really putting cannibalism as a trigger on head? Then we have to go all the way back. You know what I mean? Like so sometimes I think with trigger warnings, like it has to be up to the individual reader who's reviewing it to then go online and tell people.
Mm.
I think it's hard for the author or from the writer side to include the trigger warnings because I don't know. It can be subjective.
Do you know what I think would be an amazing YouTube series that I
Mm.
would most certainly be watching is you and your publicist having these conversations about what should and shouldn't go in a book. A, it would be super engaging and entertaining, but B, very educational for authors as well.
I think she and I, it's funny, whenever we talk, I wish the hard part that is in the pandemic, we just haven't seen each other
Mm.
in over a year, sort of in physical. When we're together, it's always hilarious because I'll be like, and this part, she's like, nope, I'm not going to be in it. And I'm just like, and I have to be like, but hold on, let's calm
Yeah.
down. Like, she always has to start from because she knows that I'm going to try to push, So sometimes she does put in the comment, like, because she always has comments in my manuscript. And she'll be like, this one will kill me. Like, this one,
Mm.
Um,
I think we just stumbled on something that we need to create is the office, but the writer's version, so the writer's room version of the
Oh
office.
God, totally. Sometimes I want to just put the comments like
Mm.
out of context. Like one time she wrote like the context was in all caps. Why is a young girl dancing for the Sultan? And I'm like, oh God, she's right. You know what I mean? Like these kind of basic things that once she actually frames it in all caps in a comment, I have to be like, okay. Let me reframe what I'm trying to do because clearly it's coming across the wrong way.
Yeah,
So
Lalo says that's a great idea. That would be a great show. Okay, so let's get in a couple of questions in before we go over to the writing community question time, and of course we'll find out the new family member from Twitter. So just before we move on to that part, I've written some questions down for you.
mm,
Some are random, some are to do with writing, and the first one would be, what is your biggest fear or phobia?
my biggest phobia is that somehow I won't be able to make a living as a
Mm.
writer sometime in the future, and that I'll have to get a job that doesn't include writing because I won't be good at it.
Yeah,
So I
or
feel
make
like,
it as a tennis pro.
yeah, a very
Yeah.
old tennis player. Yeah.
Okay. What one person would you like to go on an adventure with, either from real life or in fiction?
Let me think. I wish my grandmother and I used to have sort of intense, crazy adventures around the world, and she passed away maybe 10 years ago.
Hmm.
But if she was still alive, she used to take me on a trip somewhere in the world every summer, and I feel like that really informed a lot of my writing.
Fantastic. Okay, if you could take a character from fiction, whether that be TV, film, or literature, and put it into a story of your own, what character would you like to take and put in what story would you put them in?
Maybe Mr. Darcy. I feel like there's a lot that can be done with him. He was so stiff in Pride and Prejudice, so I would like to see the loosened up version of him.
Okay, interested. And if you could change the ending to any TV, film, or book, what ending would you change? And it doesn't have to be a good or a bad reason. It could be for whatever reason.
Maybe Vanity Fair. I feel like that book ends so depressingly. So I feel like that needed a new ending.
Bit of a pickup at the end.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and what does literary success look like to you? What would you be looking back on your career and thinking, I'm really happy with that, with success?
Oh, just simply did the books that are on my shelf, like all the books that are sitting there, that are the collection of the things I wrote. Do I have any regrets about it?
Okay,
That's it. Simple as that.
fantastic. Okay, so let's do this is a new family member, and what I mean by that is someone that's followed the show on Twitter, who doesn't have much of a following, who's a writer. The whole reason this show exists is to help indie authors and kind of give them knowledge and promote them. So this person hasn't got many followers. Do you know what a GIF is?
Of course.
It's not always that simple. People get it wrong on this show and send things as gifts instead. So GIF, we're going to send them a GIF on Twitter, which you can select what GIF that is or what type of GIF. There's been some very random ones on this. So I'll play a little video and we'll find out who that person is. And then we'll get the audience to send them a welcome to the show. So that person is Sandra L. Bell. She says she's a children's author, and her Twitter handle is at Sandra L. Bell. She's soon to be a self-published children's author, so well done to you. Her debut book, Jeremy's Treasure Hunt, is coming soon. She has 16 followers, so if we could tweet that person, welcome to the family and the show, what are we going to send them as a GIF?
I have to pick a GIF.
Yeah, I mean, it can be any kind of theme or topic. I don't know. We've had Hannibal Lecter, we've had Marilyn Monroe, we had dry shampoo once.
Let's send a tennis GIF. If we can find a good one of like
Good,
I feel like Roger Federer always has good ones.
yes, a good Roger Federer tennis GIF to this person, please. If you're watching, even if you're listening back next week and you think, you know what, send another one. Doesn't matter. Okay, so while you guys are doing that, I'll ask one or two more questions and then send your questions in for us to end the show off, and we will try and answer them as best as we can in part 3 of the show. So I've got a question that's come up through this interview now, and that question is: you obviously write a lot of darkness in your stories, alongside the fantasy element of things. Is there an attraction for you to go into the writing of horror?
No. I mean, I think I like to scare people, but to me, it's more of a gothic thriller element to it. I'm not so interested in that kind of horror, unless we're talking like the deepest I would go is more like Shirley Jackson, that kind of like chills. Like I could do a good ghost story,
Yeah.
but pure horror, not so much. I just don't enjoy murder for murder's sake,
Okay. Someone who is a director, what are your kind of go-to films or perhaps favorite films of yours? Not
I
specifically
love
your own, but also ones that are out there.
I love romances,
Mm.
where you can really make you root for the main couple, and I like stories that subvert the genre while also excelling at it. So
Okay.
movies like Scream, which is a horror movie that's a spoof of a horror movie that's very scary, or Charade is my all-time favorite movie with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, which is a spoof of Alfred Hitchcock, but much scarier than most Hitchcock movies. So anything that sort of like bus genre. I felt like Parasite was like that. I feel like All About Eve has that quality. Fargo has that quality. Lost in Translation has that quality. To me, I want to be entertained and I want to be surprised. I think of something like Pirates of the Caribbean, the first
Mm.
movie which I saw in the theater, and was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. like, like that movie invented a genre. We had never seen sort of a big family film with that kind of intelligence and scope and all of that. So,
Mm.
I think that's what I look for.
Okay, some interesting choices in there. Okay, so let's go on to round 3 of the show, which is community questions. So thank you for the questions that are coming in from you all. And the first one we have is from Lalai. Thank you. Have to ask, how was your series picked up for Netflix? Are you super excited? I think every writer's dream for a book is to have a screen adaptation.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that happened. I mean, it was picked up by Universal in 2013, went through a lot of development ups and downs,
Mm.
and then moved over to Netflix. And Paul Feig signed on to direct it as a movie, and it will come out next year. And I spent a lot of time on set in Belfast earlier this year, and have been pretty involved in the production as much as I can be. And yeah, I mean, it's a very strange, surreal experience, because this is a world that sort of I've built from my own experience and spirit and all those sorts of things. And a movie adaptation means that, you're there to help guide and give a sense of what you were thinking and how you're seeing things. But you
Mm.
also want to see, especially in the case of Paul, who's one of the great directors we have, you want to see his interpretation of it. And so it's a version of the story. It's a version of the story that will exist in a different medium. And as an author, your job is to, I think, at once let go and help where you can and enjoy the process, but also to not get so fixated on everything that you stop focusing on your own work. Because my job is to keep making work.
Fantastic. Are you a planning or is there going to be a cameo in the film?
I can't say anything.
Ah,
I feel like, does anyone want to see an author cameo? I don't know. I mean,
yeah, of course.
we'll see.
Well avoided. Okay, Anya, thank you. Question: have you ever been to a haunted place? Did you feel anything paranormal?
Into a haunted place. Such a good question. I don't think I've ever felt like a place was haunted, but now I want to pay more attention to that.
Mm.
Good
Would
question.
Would
Yeah,
you go to like one of these places that does like a haunting experience?
no. No, I'm coming to the UK in a couple weeks, so now I want to do one when I'm over there.
Yeah, there's plenty of old spooky places around that do those things, especially in places like Ireland as well. So, okay, this is a big name, Buddy of Woods Beyond.
That's a fucking evil reference.
Yeah, what can we expect from the SGE movie, and what were the SOF Yes.
The Sophia's. She's talking about the two young stars, Sophia Wiley, who plays Agatha, and Sophia Ann Caruso, who plays Sophie in the Skull for Evil movie.
Hmm.
Um, I think you can expect a very grand adaptation. The scale of it is massive. It's one of Netflix's biggest movies ever. And the two Sophias could not have been cooler. Sophia and Caruso and I have become really good friends, and we hang out in New York all the time. And I just think we live on the same frequency.
Mm.
Um, she is as great as they come. She's the perfect Sophie. And Sophia Wiley is just this kind of luminous, radiant bolt of joy. And she's an amazing Agatha. I think after this, she'll be able to do any movie she wants for the rest of her life because she's that good in it, good in this movie. And I just think they're going to be big stars. I mean, they already are big stars, but they're going to sort of take over the world after this.
Amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of people very excited for that, and I definitely will be tuning in. Chelsea says, do you have a favourite of the Grimm fairy tales, which we kind of mentioned earlier?
Maybe Hansel and Gretel and Sleeping Beauty, just because they really do live on that dark edge of sort of provocation and scaring you. So those two are the ones that I think stick out to me.
Okay, if there's any more questions, send them in, guys. In the meantime, what are your future plans? Is there anything you can tell us about what's next for you, and if you're working on anything at the moment?
Yeah, I'm working on a book right now that's almost done, which will come out next year. Uh, and we'll probably announce that in a few months.
Okay.
And then I have a graphic novel coming out in 2023. And other than that, that is it for now. I'm going to finish this book and then take a little bit of a break and figure out what I want to do next because I've been delivering a book a year for 11 years. So I think it's time to, I don't know, have some different adventures.
Okay. That does I kind of speak at the moment. That does sound like a good idea. Perhaps going on some adventures of your own and sparking that creativity. So you probably deserve a big rest after all the work you've been putting in for that at the moment.
It's time for something a little different. So yeah.
Yeah. I've got another question about your website actually, and at what point of the your author career did that website arise for your book series?
Which website? Ever Never?
Yes, it is fantastic.
Yeah, evernever.com is, we decided with Be Some Beauty, because Be Some Beauty is its own sort of universe, to create this sort of umbrella brand called, Ever Never World, which will sort of house all my fantasy projects, in a way that readers can sort of think of it as the home for all my work. So, and maybe the universes can connect in the future. We wanted it to feel almost like Disney, where everything's independent, but there can be little crossovers here.
Yeah, it really is good. I'll put the link to that in the description so people can check it out. It certainly is worth having a look at. So before we wrap up then, as we're approaching the hour, let everybody know where they can find your work and where they can pre-order Beasts and Beauty and Beasts that is out. No, Beasts and Beauty, the right way around, that is out next week.
So evernever.com is where you can get everything. There's signed editions of Beast and Beauty available for pre-order now, whether you live in the US or the UK or internationally. We have signed editions available everywhere. The UK edition from Fourth Estate is incredible. It is sort of like the best gift you can give someone because it's just so stunning. And you can find me on Instagram at Soman C or Twitter at Soman Chainani. That's really the best place to find me. So
definitely, and it smells amazing too.
I just got mine. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
A lot of books do smell good, but some smell a lot better, and that is one of the best smelling books. That's a weird thing to say. It's one of the best smelling books that I've smelled. Weird comments. Okay.
I will put that as the new blurb. It smells good.
Yeah, it smells excellent. That's maybe a new gimmick we can do, selling books. Scented books. Who knows?
100%.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. But before we go, I'm going to mention, obviously, on next week's show, I said the schedule's changed. I do have an author which I'm pre-recording for next week on Sunday. So if you have questions, please send them in. That person is Christina Nadevona. Probably pronounced that wrong. She has grown up influenced by people like Arthur Conan Doyle, Stephen King, and she released a book last year and she's only 14 years old.
What?
Exactly. So to be into those sort of horror writers and to be into that literature and to release a book at that age is completely incredible. And I'm sure it's going to be mind-blowing interview. So if you have questions for that person, please drop them into us. But in the meantime, Soman, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and the audience have loved it as well. So, for me, it's goodbye, and for the audience, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.